Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. I wanted to make a video today just highlighting what the narcissistic boomer is doing. Of course, I want to preface this video with saying that when I talk about narcissistic boomers, I'm not talking about all baby boomers. There are some boomers who are not narcissists, that are normal, that were good parents, who care about their children. However, there is a vast segment of that generation who just simply are narcissists. And I think it is to a degree where we can make generalizations about that generation as a whole, again, minus a small percentage of them who are not like this. And so when you hear me say narcissistic boomers, if you're a boomer and you do not act this way, I don't want you to feel personally attacked by it. I'm specifically talking about the ones who behave in narcissistic ways. And I just want to say that they learned this behavior when they were very young because they came into a time of historic affluence that was unparalleled in history. Their parents, the World War II generation, lived under hard times, right? They had to ration food. They went through the Depression. They went through World War. And there was this idea about more permissive parenting where they wanted to give their children more than what they had. And unfortunately, that created essentially a generation of sociopaths, okay? Again, with the exception of some people. But they learned very young that they had the numbers. And that is kind of, you know, how they were able to get their way and get what they wanted. They would just show up en masse, protest, throw tantrums, cause a scene to get what they wanted. Now, what I want to say too is in their narcissism, you'll hear them talk even today about how they were responsible for ending the Vietnam War. They were not actually protesting the Vietnam War. They were protesting the draft. They were protesting them having to be involved in it. And as Ollie Matthews has pointed out in his very early videos about boomer narcissists, as these people were attacking Vietnam veterans coming back from war, spitting on them, calling them baby killers, throwing jars of urine at them. I mean, it's the same tactics that they utilize today. This is what they were doing to people who, you know, their average person who was drafted and sent to war, that wasn't their fault, and most of them weren't doing the things that they were accused of by the narcissists. So once they ended the draft, their little protests ended. So this is what they're doing today. This is at a detention facility in Ohio, I believe, for Haitian illegals who are getting ankle monitors because, you know, they actually have to show up to court dates because they came into the country illegally. And so what we notice about this crowd is that it is very geriatric. We see a lot of baby boomers here. Now, of course, there are some younger narcissists as well, but you know, a lot of these boomers that didn't have children, like this is a hobby for them, protesting, which again, they have been doing their entire lives.
Power! Walk in strength and power! God is with you!
It is just a display of communal narcissism. They get to come out here in virtue signal because the narcissist has a very fragile sense of self, and they need validation. They need to socially signal their virtue to others so they can be validated.
Strength and power! God is with you! Walk in strength and power!
They they just chant the same meaningless slogans. Here we've got the boomer holding a sign that says, "Welcome strangers." But do you think that this affluent narcissistic boomer is going to welcome the stranger into her home and allow them to live in her home? Of course, the answer is no. They don't think about the consequences of their actions. By bringing in 70 million plus illegals into this country, they're not going to have to deal with what their children and grandchildren are going to have to deal with. And they just, it's like they don't care. And this is a typical narcissist behavior. They care more about a stranger who they don't know and have zero connection to than they care about their own children, their own grandchildren. Do you think that these people could be bothered to protest like the cost of living or the cost of housing for their own children or the job situation for their own children when their generation is the one that offshored manufacturing so they could have cheap foreign labor, hollowed out our country so that they could earn money in the stock market? Like it boggles the mind, the lack of self-awareness these people have, their insufferable smugness and self-righteousness.
Immigrants are welcome here. No hate, strength, and power.
And again, they just repeat that. It is like watching brainwashed people just saying the same thing over and over again that is literally meaningless slogans. Nothing of substance coming out of their mouths. They're honking their horns. Look at me. Look at me. Look how virtuous I am. Look at my sign. Oh my gosh. It is just... They love to do these displays. They love to irritate people with their clapping, their blowing their whistles. It is literally watching like a 5-year-old throwing a tantrum. This is their idea of doing something, is just putting on a performative display and throwing a tantrum and then, like, you know, high-fiving each other and patting each other on the back. Look at their smug smiles. We love you. They don't know these people. Again, they love the stranger. They hate their own children. They have nothing but contempt for their children. You think they can be bothered to show up to the grandchildren's basketball game? And then, of course, you have the few young people who have also adopted narcissism as a coping mechanism because they were raised by narcissists. Look at this one. Look at the smug smile on her face, the self-satisfaction of saying, yeah, I'm better than you. Dignity and compassion. Would any of these narcissist boomers show up in protest on behalf of the victims of violent crimes perpetrated by illegals? No. The answer is obviously no. And yet they have the audacity to hold up signs talking about dignity, loving your neighbor. Their neighbor can get viciously attacked and murdered by an illegal. They wouldn't care at all. They wouldn't be out there protesting. No, what they would be doing would be protesting for the human rights and dignity of the perpetrator.
No fear. No hate. No fear. Immigrants are welcome here.
Oh my God.
But not everyone shares that enthusiasm.
Here they are, and they protest some of the stupidest things. This is just their hobby. And again, they're either childless, and so this is what they do in lieu of actually having a family to spend time with. This is how they spend their time. literally protesting the Blue Angels.
Activists held banners and handed out earplugs.
Why not celebrate our cultural diversity with music?
Our cultural diversity. Right. That's what we should be celebrating, according to the boomer narcissist.
Food, dance, on the water, near the water, starting in the summer of 2027.
The Washington Physicians for Social Responsibility is calling on Seafair to make this the last year for the flight demonstration squadron. They're citing concerns about the jet fumes impacting the climate and people's lung health.
Our message is, Blue Angels, thank you for your service. I'm a 30-year service member myself, but it's time to move on.
But we thank you for your service, but F you.
We're not gonna take it.
Here we've got a completely geriatric crowd of weirdos protesting a non-existent monarchy. This was all part of their no kings nonsense in service to the oligarchy that they installed and that they maintain through nepotism. You know, it is just, it's such a disgusting thing to witness.
Are you ready, Boston? We're not gonna take it.
Look at this cringe behavior. The singing, the clapping. They accomplish nothing with this. And again, they're not protesting really anything.
This bank is funding hatred.
This bank is funding hatred. They say this gleefully with these like shit-eating grins on their faces. They don't care about anything. If they cared about, corporate greed or the oligarchy that they represent, they would be protesting usury that banks perpetrate on the American people. They don't care about that, though. It's all about virtue signaling how not racist they are.
We're not gonna take it anymore. You gotta see it with us. We're not gonna.
Look at their faces. Look at the glee that they have. Can't be bothered to do anything for their own children, who they hate, who they have, nothing but contempt for, who they mock, the younger generations, who they have the audacity to call entitled.
Gonna take it. Go! This bank is funding hatred. We're not gonna take it.
This is a social outing for them. This is a social event for them. That's all it is. And you can see this in how they're all wearing their silly little matching t-shirts. They've got on their little uniforms. This is what they're doing in their retirement. It's not taking care of their grandchildren, helping their kids. This is how they spend their time. It's just me, me, me.
But what do you make about being here at No Kings 3?
Well, also at our age, we were doing this in the 60s.
Yeah, this is what you have been doing your entire lives. You never grew up. You never took accountability for anything. You have made everything about yourself incessantly. You put regulations on everything, making it so much harder for people to start businesses, for younger people to be able to afford houses. These are people, mind you, who were able to buy a 3-bedroom home in the 70s for $50,000 that is now today worth $850,000. And they were able to get a 30-year mortgage with, a low interest rate. They were able to support their families on one income generally. Just no awareness, no care at all to protest how younger people are being treated, which is a result of the policies their generation put in place. And none of these people have the desire to change their lifestyles as they get older, to downgrade, give up their big mansions and move into an apartment, 2-bedroom apartment, which is all they need because they don't have kids in the house anymore. No. In fact, they want even bigger houses in their retirement. They gave themselves pensions we will never enjoy, while they're also collecting Social Security that they feel entitled to because they say we paid into it, while they get the $300,000 a year pension as well.
So just to continue, it just seems like ridiculous that we're still having to protest. So many issues.
So many issues, yeah.
Yeah, so many issues, so many that we can't even really articulate them. There is no kings or monarchy in America, yet they are protesting that, and then they ignore the Epstein class and the corporate oligarchy that they are part of. Here they are again, doing the same thing. It's all these geriatric people. Dignity and human rights for all, but also, you know, to our children, F you. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps.
Save our sidewalks! Save our sidewalks!
This one is just hilarious. This one, they've got one of the narcissists literally laying in the middle of the street because they want to have a gay street or something like that.
Keep our sidewalk! Keep our sidewalk!
One of them has a cane, like a walking cane, that she's just kind of like pounding on the ground as they all clap and say the same thing. And this is the same performance that they put on at every single protest they do, which is apparently like a weekly event for them. Here we have more of them protesting immigration enforcement, again doing their ridiculous songs. And just look at it. It is almost entirely boomers, except for maybe one or two of their narcissistic children.
We shall not be moved just like a tree that's planted by the waters. We shall not be.
The absurd signs about Stephen Miller, who they pretend is some kind of cartoon villain because, you know, he has the audacity to enforce the nation's laws. I mean, honestly. And here is the New York Times. The boomers are protesting Trump. Where's Gen Z? I don't know, working 3 jobs to barely be able to pay rent, living out of their cars. You know, and here's a perfect example. These are boomers protesting in Fairfax County 2 days after an illegal stabbed and murdered a woman, and they're out there protesting ICE. They don't care about the woman who was just murdered 2 days prior to their little Defend Democracy protest. They're out there smiling, sneering, in their self-righteousness, constant displays. And it reminds me of the George Carlin skit where he talks about the boomers and how they are to blame for a lot of problems that we see in our country today.
Hold on a sec. A lot of these cultural crimes I've been complaining about can be blamed on the baby boomers. Something else I'm a little tired of hearing about. The baby boomers. Whiny, narcissistic, self-indulgent people with a simple philosophy. Give me it, it's mine!
Literally. That was their entire philosophy as a generation. Again, not all of them, but a majority of them. That's all that, no regard for how they're leaving the next generation, their children, their grandchildren. I mean, every other generation prior to them wanted to leave their children better off. They won't even let go of power. They will stay in office until they stroke out and die, like Dianne Feinstein, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Mitch McConnell, who nobody even knows if he's alive right now or not, because they just can't give up the control. They love having control over people's lives, and they do this with their kids. They exercise and exert financial control over their children. They purposely sabotage their career prospects, their relationships, because they can't stand to see their child succeed and maybe possibly get a little more attention than they are getting. And so they will purposely sabotage their children to try to keep them dependent on them, infantilize them, so that they can then lord their money over them. It's honestly disgusting behavior.
Give me that, it's mine! These people were given everything. Everything was handed to them. And they took it all. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and they stayed loaded for 20 years and had a free ride. But now they're staring down the barrel of middle-age burnout, and they don't like it.
These are people who were able to get an Ivy League college education for $8,000. And they mock millennials, Gen Z, who are complaining about student loan debt. And they'll say, oh, you shouldn't have got a gender studies degree. And a lot of these people, that's not the degrees they had. They're getting computer science degrees. They were told to go into STEM. All of these jobs, though, are being outsourced to H-1Bs, which they are bringing into the country, you know, because they have to have cheap labor so they can maintain their, stock profits. And it's just, again, the mentality that they have is disgusting. When you look at the cost of a college education now, and all of these narcissist baby boomers, by the way, told their children they had to go to college and get a college degree and, everything would be fine. Didn't care how much money they were taking out in student loans with 23% interest on them that can't be discharged in a bankruptcy. Basically making their children indentured slaves for life. Are they protesting the universities? Are they protesting the lenders? No, they're mocking gleefully these young people who are struggling to pay back this debt, which can never be paid off. It was designed that way. Well, they got their college education for $4,000 to $8,000 total. It is disgusting. And they say, oh, just stop drinking Starbucks and eating avocado toast. It out of touch doesn't even begin to describe it.
They don't like it, so they've turned self-righteous. And they want to make things hard on younger people. They tell them abstain from sex, say no to drugs. As for the rock and roll, they sold that for television commercials a long time ago. So they could buy pasta machines and Stairmasters and soybean futures.
They're still doing this. They are still engaging in the same behaviors that they've always engaged in. And again, like a typical narcissist, the stranger is more important to them than their own children. They can pretend to have compassion and virtue signal about their empathy. Meanwhile, they have no empathy for the victims of violent crimes perpetrated by illegals. They have no empathy or compassion for their own children and grandchildren who they hate. And this is how they're choosing to spend their retirement, their final days, protesting, whining, like they always have. But I'm interested to know what you guys think, and I hope you all have a good day. Whee!